are you? How the heck are you?
We're going to do a podcast.
So let's get a little deeper into your story, shall we? Who are you?
Well,
that becomes a sticky wicket. You know, what's your juice? Let's get back on track. You've got a lot of things going on. What is it that you're curious about? You know, what you do?
Run the world.
Right? Well,
like, let's crumble up some philosophy for you.
boom, 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 boom. It's been a whirlwind for you. What is it that supercharges you about this? Lots going on, lots coming up. Or is that too many stuff? Did I ask too many questions?
No, not too many questions.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Mind Your Own Business, the Chamber podcast. This is where I, your host, Moe Belliveau, Executive Director of the Chamber of Greater Easthampton, get to talk with our chamber members, local entrepreneurs, local thought leaders, professionals, etc. And I get to find out who they are, what they do, and most importantly, why they do it. Before we get started today, I'd like to thank E-Media. We are in E-Media studios today, recording and filming. I'd like to thank especially Jeff Mastriani, who is the executive director here at E-Media. We have Jackson Foote, who is our production coordinator, and Tim Riley, who is our operations manager. So thank you to those folks who always make us look and sound fabulous. So today, I'm super excited to be talking here for episode 7. We're chatting with Ryan Smith, who is the manager of media and community relations and broadcasting for the Springfield Thunderbirds.
I gotta figure out a way to get my job title shortened a little bit.
I know.
It's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. Ryan handles all play-by-play duties as the voice of the Thunderbirds hockey, and he oversees all of the media relations and is also active in the team's community efforts. So, welcome, Ryan.
Yes, thanks so much, Mo.
Great to have you here. Ryan has also called Springfield Thunderbird games for the last 5 years. So, let's get into it, shall we, Ryan?
Why not?
Excellent. So great to see you. So let's just start right off. And how the heck are you?
Well, I'm terrific. I think I'd be lying if I said I wish this interview was a little bit later on, and hopefully we were in the midst of a run to the Calder Cup Finals and to a championship. But the reality is it's hard to do year in and year out. And after the run we had in 2022, it's hard to duplicate that when players are playing into late June and then you're asked to turn around and start over again in October. It's tough year in and year out to go that far, and unfortunately just wasn't in the cards for us this year, but does give us a chance to kind of exhale a little bit after what was kind of 18 months of nonstop for us, from getting back from the pandemic to putting a new season on once again. And it's crazy how fast the time goes. I had someone in the news industry tell me once that the expression that they heard from a higher up of theirs was, the days are long, but the years are short.
Yeah, right.
And I think that kind of encapsulates what working in sports is. And
right.
It's wild. It's a grind. It's so much fun. But man, you have a chance to look back on it and say, wow, where did the time go? Because you're so caught up in the day-to-day of it. And
right.
when you have a chance to sit back and look at the bigger picture, it's pretty astonishing to kind of reminisce.
Right. So before we get into, the recent past season for the Thunderbirds and moving forward and that sort of thing, I'd like to get a little idea of who Ryan is.
Yeah.
And maybe you can give us a little bit of your backstory and how you've gotten from point A to point B.
Yeah, well, I have to try to debate how far back in the story I want to go, but I think it all goes back to kind of when I was in elementary school. And my mom always tells the story so proudly that when I probably was 8 or 9 years old, and I would have a little tape recorder up to my mouth and doing mock play-by-play or mock anchoring of something on ESPN or some sort of sporting event. I grew up outside Philadelphia, so to this day I am a just huge Eagles and Phillies fan. So it was kind of the soundtrack of my childhood was listening to Harry Callis, who of course was also synonymous with NFL films and everything of that nature. He had this absolutely iconic voice, and I was really spoiled to get to grow up listening to him be a soundtrack of my summers, and it was something I tried to emulate. And I think I came to a realization when I was 11, 12 years old as a skinny little short kid in the suburbs of Philadelphia that playing sports probably wasn't going to be in the cards for me. And I think I kind of had a realization that I knew I had to be involved in it in some capacity. And I thought, if I can't be playing it, what's my in? What's the next way I can kind of get my feet wet in it? And broadcasting always sort of resonated with me because my eyes were glued to live sports growing up. I wasn't so much into comedy series. I wasn't into cartoons. I wasn't into movies, but live sports was always something that, I don't know, just grabbed me and I gravitated to it. So I think I reached that realization that being on the broadcast side of it was something that really interested me. And by the grace of God, my mother was pushing for me in my formative years by the time I was like 12, 13, that there was a business venture started by a fellow named Jeremy Treatman in Philadelphia called Sports Broadcasting Camps, and it was kind of a new idea and kind of his own startup. He was someone who was in the industry, never really got his feet wet, and never really could catch that big break to reach a national level ESPN, so be it. But he wanted to, with his talents and his skill sets, he wanted to have some sort of outlet to give back to up-and-comers who kind of are still young and still maturing and still trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. But he created this idea of a sports broadcasting camp, and I was so shy about going, and I wasn't sure. I was like, is this really for me? And my mom pushed me, and then didn't give me a choice. She signed me up for it, and
well, that's pretty awesome.
And if she didn't do that, I don't know where my future would have taken me, because getting to go to that in Philadelphia and meeting some of my broadcasting mentors and icons in the industry and people that I still lean on very heavily now 20 years later, I don't know where I would have been without that. That kind of was my springboard, and I went to Penn State and got to jump right in and do play-by-play, do talk shows, do anchoring things. Throughout my 4 years, I get started as a freshman, and being at one of the top athletic universities in the country where you have access to all these great programs and all these great opportunities. It was a match made in heaven, and there's a huge family background with the Nittany Lions in my family. Both my parents went there. I think I've got 8 extended family that went there, so it was kind of a calling in my house, and I didn't know it was going to end up being my calling too, but it ended up being one of the best decisions I could have made for myself. And now we look another 10 years down the road. I'm 10 years out of college. Literally next week will be 10 years out of college for me.
Nice.
And it's crazy to look back at all of that. And my journey took me out to Madison, Wisconsin for a couple of years in the United States Hockey League. And then I was fortunate enough that I had a manager out there who was well connected with Easthampton's own Nate Costa here, and that kind of was the stepping stone of how I ended up in Springfield.
Wow. Okay. And so I understand that you had the opportunity, or you recently were able to realize a childhood dream.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Oh yeah. It was somehow it's already been over a year ago, which is hard for me to fathom that it's already been.
So
that
tell us
long.
about that, and tell us how you happened to be there, and what led to that.
Yeah. So
and what it was.
Yeah. So the childhood dream for me, ever since I was about probably 14, 15 years old, the dream was to call games in the NHL, and my real childhood dream has been to become the voice of the Philadelphia Flyers, who are my hometown team. And so I'm going about my business here with the T-Birds in the American Hockey League, which is so many broadcasters and players can attest to it being the perfect stepping stone for everyone trying to make that leap into the majors, into the top.
Yep, that's where everybody wants to go.
Into the pinnacle of your field. And it was no different for me. And Last year, coming out of the pandemic, we had a new NHL affiliation with the St. Louis Blues. And funny enough, the radio voice for the St. Louis Blues, Chris Kerber, is someone that a lot of folks in this listening audience, any hockey fans in this area's audience, probably remembers that Chris was the voice of the Springfield Falcons for, I believe, 4 seasons back in the late 90s into the early 2000s. And he used that as his launching pad to St. Louis, where he's been with the Blues now for parts of 2 decades. And it was late in our season, early April. It was the 11th of April. I had just gotten back from a road weekend trip to Hershey, 5 hours away. I had rolled into my house at about 3 in the morning and slept until 10, just trying to catch up on sleep and trying to ungroggy myself, for lack of a better term. And my phone rings, and it's Chris Kerber. And I'm thinking, this isn't altogether out of the ordinary. We were getting ready as an office to go see the Blues in Boston play the Bruins the very next night. We had gotten a bulk group of tickets up in the Upper Bowl at the TD Garden,
Cool.
just to kind of show our support for our NHL affiliates with the Blues. It was a Tuesday night in April, just a chance for us to get away from the office and have kind of a work outing, so to speak. So when I see Chris's name flash on my phone as the call, I'm literally, first of all, still laying in bed. I'm awake, thankfully, but I'm just kind of laying there just trying to get myself relaxed after the long travel. And I'm thinking in my head, maybe he wants to chat a little bit about up-and-comers for the T-Birds who are up with the Blues at that time. Maybe he's looking to have me on for a pregame hit or for an intermission hit or something along those lines. So I answer and I'm chatting with Chris, and he's spending about 5 or 6 minutes. We're just kind of discussing how's life, how are things with the T-Birds, how are things with the Blues. Great showing for both teams. They're both on the precipice of playoff runs, so we're just kind of shooting the breeze about all of that. And then he, without much transition to it, he decides to drop the bomb about 5-6 minutes into the call. Yeah, so I know you guys are going to be in Boston tomorrow night for the game, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to hand you the keys to the car and call the second period of Blues Bruins tomorrow night in Boston.
Oh, wow.
I think it took me probably a minute to 90 seconds to actually say the word yes.
Right, because you have to process.
I think the first words out of my mouth were, well, Curbs, I got to admit, you caught me off guard here a little bit. And I literally, I don't think I said anything for a 5-10 second block. And then all of a sudden, it clicked in with me. I was like, yes, by the way, if I didn't say that yet, yes, of course, I'll do it.
Nice.
Just let me know where I'm meeting you, what time.
And what was that like?
Oh, the next 30 hours were breakneck. I was off. My boss, Nate, gave me off that day just to kind of rest up after coming home from the road trip. But as soon as that happened, I was like, I need to go in the office now, and I need to prepare my packets and my charts and everything I use in a game-by-game note situation. So I go into the office in the afternoon and I tell them, I'm like, yeah, so I'm not going to be sitting with you guys actually for the first 2 periods.
Nice.
I got the call to do the second period, so I was like, okay.
Nice.
So you guys have fun down there. I'm going to be upstairs and probably trying to process what all's happening. And it was the worst part, and I think players can probably attest to the same thing when they're making their debuts in the NHL. The worst part is waiting. It's not the actual playing or the actual broadcasting, the doing of the craft. It's the waiting. And when I got upstairs to the 9th floor at the Garden, I'm sitting in the booth there with Chris Kerber and Joe Vitale. I'm sitting there, I'm waiting, and the first period begins, and both teams score in the first 45 seconds of the game, and I'm thinking to myself, what am I getting myself into? Is this going to be an 8-7 game where it's total mayhem, and
was it?
It's going to be back and forth chaos? Well, the first period ended, I believe.
But isn't that more fun when it's like that?
It is. Yeah. In the broadcasting sector, it is. And the first period ended 2-1 in favor of Boston. And the second period, by the time I finally take over the mic and we start the second period, The first 15 minutes of the second period, nothing happens. There's no penalties. There's barely any scoring chances. There's barely any action. And I'm thinking to myself, is my first period in the NHL literally going to be
silence?
Nothing? And lo and behold, a Bruin player, I'll never forget the sequence of events. Trent Frederick, a rookie for the Bruins, takes an unsolicited roughing minor after a whistle, which gives the Blues power play the action. And the Blues power play at the time had been dynamite. And I'm saying to myself, okay, if it's going to happen, this is going to be when it happens. And lo and behold, the Blues score twice in just under 2 minutes, take a lead. They end up winning the game 4-2. So
that's not bad.
I have a game-winning goal call in my first ever National Hockey League game. And
good for you.
It was a night I'll never forget, and having just countless messages from family, from friends I've known and talked to for years, to friends I hadn't caught up with in years, to players on our team sending me best wishes, and former coaches of mine and former bosses of mine. And it was just it was a flooding of outpouring that I never expected. I mean, I thought I would get some messages from people, but I never expected it to be what it became. And the Blues and the T-Birds could not have been better to me about it. I have game sheets. I have a game puck from that game that the Blues and T-Birds general manager tracked down for me, and it was a sequence that I know I'm getting long-winded with it because I still, a year plus later,
surreal. It's
still hard to fathom that really happened, that at age 31 I was able to achieve a dream that I thought might not ever come, to be honest. And you just hope that day in and day out your work is getting noticed, and you're putting your best foot forward and trying to be humble about it. And I like to think that all happened for me in that way, and hopefully it's just the start of what's to come.
Nice. Yeah, hopefully. What was it like? Was that your first experience of working with Joe Vitale?
Yeah, I hadn't met Joey until that night, and it was...
How was that?
I gotta try to kind of emphasize what it's like to have someone to work with as an analyst to bounce thoughts off of during a live play-by-play broadcast.
I just love his energy.
Yeah, because with the T-Birds, I'm doing everything myself, which there's positives and negatives to it. I don't have to worry about somebody else talking as play all of a sudden ramps up and there's a scoring chance and a potential goal. They have to kind of butt back in as a play-by-play guy. But with Joey, I've worked with analysts in college who are just fellow students, and you get a sense of who you work well with and who you kind of have to try to have more signals with each other, a tap on the arm or a look or something. With Joey,
he's a pro.
Yeah, it felt as if I had done games with Joey for 5 years. Yeah. And it's really hard to find that so quickly off the hop. And Joey, for being a guy who played in the NHL and a guy who has been the Blues analyst with Chris Kerber for a number of years now since his playing career ended. He could not have been better with me as someone who was just kind of a starstruck rookie jumping into the booth.
Right.
But he couldn't have been better, and I felt so comfortable and at home within 5 minutes of talking with him before we ever hit the air. And I'll never forget, I think the first stoppage of my first NHL game, Joey turns to me and goes, "So Ryan, when did Curbs give you the call that it was happening?" And I said, I believe it was like 11 o'clock yesterday morning, and I sounded like a babbling idiot and didn't know what to say or do.
Right.
And then his follow up to that was, "So you were okay with so you were good with doing it. You were ready to jump on board." I was like, "Yeah, I found the motivation to do it somehow." Joey.
Yeah, right. Pulled it down from the depths of God only knows where. So before we go off into another direction, I'm just wondering, for folks who may not be as familiar as you with how all of these leagues and teams and so on work, I understand that the T-Birds or Thunderbirds are an affiliate of the St. Louis Blues, right?
Yes.
So the Thunderbirds is of the AHL, and the Blues are from the NHL. What is that about, and how does that work? How do they become affiliates of each other?
So the AHL prides itself on being the lead developmental league for the National Hockey League. It's something like, I think it's around 86% of NHL players have some depth of experience in the American Hockey League.
Okay.
And for some guys, they're in the AHL maybe a week when they're really young, just getting that last little bit of seasoning. Yeah. For others, it takes 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 years of AHL seasoning before they're ready to make that leap into being National Hockey League players. The affiliation, in terms of how the affiliations come to be, it varies team by team because there's a throng of probably about 2/3 of the American Hockey League teams are owned by their NHL parent club. So examples of that would be, say, the New York Rangers who own the Hartford Wolfpack, or the Boston Bruins who own the Providence Bruins, just to give a couple of examples there. Then there's some teams that are independently owned, and the Thunderbirds are an independently owned team.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We've got a band of about 29 local business owners, head-manned by Paul Picknelly, who is kind of the managing partner of all of them. I think the number at last check was 29, but I know there have been different people who have been chiming in wanting to get a minority stake. So it began with something in the neighborhood of 20 to 25, and it's grown to around 30. All of them.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that.
All of them locally tied to Springfield in Western Massachusetts, which was a big selling point for so many of them. Because when the Springfield Falcons were sold to the Arizona Coyotes back in 2016, there was that couple weeks period where there was uncertainty of whether pro hockey was going to stay in Springfield. And by the great work of Bruce Landon, who's been a fixture in hockey in this city, and the efforts of Mayor Sarno and Paul Picknelly and Nate Costa, our president, they kind of all had a hand in wanting to make sure that this would not be something that went to pasture. It was far too important to the business leaders like Paul and others they saw what could have happened to the economy in Springfield without having pro hockey downtown. It would have been a horrific loss for the area, both economically and emotionally, because of the history of hockey in Springfield, which dates back to the mid-30s. And it would have been a tough pill for them to swallow. And I never really understood how big hockey was in this city until I moved here. I knew of Springfield and the AHL landscape from afar, but until I actually moved here, I never really understood just how important that was. So to make a long story short, we were affiliated with the Florida Panthers for 4 years from 2016 to 2020. Our affiliation agreement was set to expire with Florida, but elsewhere, the St. Louis Blues had just had a bit of an unfortunate situation with themselves. The San Antonio Spurs had owned the San Antonio AHL team, and they made the decision, as with the Blues affiliation, they made the decision to sell their AHL team. They saw an opportunity to turn a profit on their investment with San Antonio, which is a team that Nate actually began his career in sports working for the San Antonio Rampage. And they sold, and it left the St. Louis Blues without a place to go, basically, at that point. And the Blues had been a team that had, unfortunately, bounced around affiliations for a couple of years, trying to find a more firm launching point for their AHL developmental team. And when the T-Birds were in the process of trying to have talks with the Panthers, the St. Louis opportunity presented itself after what happened in San Antonio. So I can't take any credit for this because this was all Paul and Nate's doing. They got on the horn with the Blues management and their brass and their ownership and said, hey, we might have an opportunity here in Springfield for you guys. I know you guys are looking for more stability in terms of knowing where your AHL team will be, and we're committed to being in on this for the long haul. And through back and forth conversations, there ended up being a fit, and they became our new affiliation starting with what would have been the 20-21 season. We opted not to play due to the pandemic, and there were a couple of other teams in the American Hockey League. Charlotte and Milwaukee did the same thing, which ended up as tough a pill as that was to swallow for us. I was out of work along with a lot of my cohorts for
I know. It was a hard year.
For about 15 to 18 months, but it was something that had to be done to kind of make sure that we were still going to be a feasible business moving forward. And fortunately, the thirst for hockey to come back, our fans came out in droves when we finally did get the lights back on in 2021, and ended up having 2 historic seasons back-to-back, which I think it was hard to see the light at the end of that tunnel for a lot of us during the depths of all of it. But I think it speaks to what we've been able to accomplish on all sides of the organization, business side, hockey side, marketing, community side. It's an effort that we're not an overly huge organization. We're still considered a small business. We're, I think, at 18, 19 men and women staff. And we do everything we can to make sure that we're a staple of our community and we're an option that people want to come and see on their weekends
obviously are.
In the winter and early spring, and hopefully when things are going well for us into the early summer as well.
Right.
But it's just been an amazing progression to get to this point from where we were in the fall of 2016 when everything started. Right.
And it has it's not really that long.
No.
Excuse me. So 2020 was a hard time. I've had a couple of conversations with as chamber members, and we value your membership with the Easthampton Chamber, and chatting back and forth with Todd McDonald, and praying that everything's gonna turn around. And turn around it did.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with this, because there's so many metrics that we look at year in and year out from a business standpoint.
Well, what a stunning. So let's talk about what that was, and you can share what that, the event that we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, which one?
Well, was it 2022, the Calder?
Yeah.
The Calder?
Making the run all the way to the Calder Cup Finals was amazing, but I think
what was the prelude? That is there?
I think there's a couple.
All right, so
I think there's a couple moments that really made us understand that, hey, we might have something good going here. I think year one, it was great for us just to show the city that we were different from the prior organization.
In 2016, you're talking?
Yeah,
yep.
We had the new ownership dynamic where everyone was local, and there was a real...
That means a difference.
There was a real pride in being locally owned and operated, and I think there was a definitive vision of what Nate and Paul wanted to see the organization do. And there were a lot of people who said at the end of the Falcons' tenure when we began, you guys are never going to be able to sell that building out. The Falcons soured the fans so much that you're going to have a hard time being successful in the marketplace. And yeah, the first year came with some lumps, and you had to kind of try to change the narrative among fans who were just assuming that it was going to be the same old in terms of kind of turning a blind eye to what was important in the community and what was going on, this, that, and the other. But I think our ability to get 3 sellouts in year one was a testament to what we were able to pull off. And even though our team on the ice wasn't a playoff team, we still were able to put together some great programming in terms of the game experience for fans of all ages, and really kind of trying to cater to the family audience with price points that were affordable for families to be able to come and enjoy a game and not feel like going to a Bruins game or going to a Red Sox game where you have to spend $40 just to feed your family at the game, not even factoring in the ticket price.
If that.
Yeah, you're right, if you're lucky. And so that was kind of our first thought of, hey, we might be able to build something off of this. 2017, 2018, we managed to pull off getting David Ortiz at a game in the month of November of our second season. And I think that was the moment when we had the press conference in the summer of 2017 announcing that Big Papi was coming to a game as part of his kind of retirement. Thank you, Western Massachusetts, for your support of my career tour. And that flipped the switch for us. We became instantly recognizable. That was, for the longest time, the most prolific night we ever had from a revenue and an attendance standpoint.
Cool.
What
a generous thing.
It really set the table for everything moving forward for us. The next year we had the AHL All-Star Classic, which was a 2-night Sunday, Monday event, where we sold every last one of our 6,800 seats for both nights of that event, something that AHL All-Star Classics have not been able to do before or since then with consistency. So we take a lot of pride in being the ones who were able to kind of make it the marquee setting for the event. MGM Springfield had just opened, so they were gracious hosts, and they've been great partners with us throughout our entire tenure. And that allowed us to really take another step forward. And I think we had hit 8 or 9 sellouts that season. Then the pandemic hit. And so we're at the point where it's like we're just hitting our stride. We're about to hit year 5. Everything is going so perfectly. And we're busting our tails and doing everything the right way. We're so happy with what we've been doing as a business. We're happy with what's been developing as a hockey team. And then the world stops, and I don't need to go into a soliloquy on that, because we've heard our stories, we've exchanged our stories, our frustrations, our heartaches, our losses. It was tough to go through, but I think we came out the other side with a new appreciation for the hard work that it took to get through the biggest adversity to date, and we came out of it with the 21-22 season with a new affiliation with the Blues, our first ever playoff trip, which was victory enough in itself. Then to have our goaltender score a goal in our second ever playoff game on home ice, first time a goalie had ever done it in the American Hockey League, actually shooting the puck and scoring.
Oh my God.
We became overnight viral sensations. We then go on to win our first 7 games of the playoffs. We go all the way to the finals. We sell out our final 4 playoff games. There's not a seat left in the building for the night we clinched the Eastern Conference title, and then 3 straight Calder Cup Finals games, not a seat in the house. I think we would have gladly changed the outcome of those games if we could have gone back and amended history a little bit, but it was a glowing success for our organization, business side, hockey side. There was a togetherness with that group, from our players on the ice, our captain Tommy Cross, to what we did in the front office and what we were able to accomplish in the community, even during a year where there were still restrictions of what we could do and not do in the community with players. And we got to roll that over into this year as everyone started coming back. School groups started coming back out to the arena.
Yeah.
And just the ability of having unrestricted access to all these different groups and be able to reach a point where everyone was finally able to be comfortable with the social spaces once again. And this year to have, I believe it was 15 sellout nights out of 36 games, to be able to sell out more than 1 in 3 games is really, outside of kind of the top tier traditional markets in this league, the Clevelands, the Hershey's, it's kind of unheard of at this level. And we were a top, I think, 12 or 13 team in attendance in a league that we outdrew markets with 3, 4, 5, 6 times the population of Greater Springfield. And again, I feel like just a spokesperson for that, because there's 17 others in our office that are doing so many different elements of making that possible for us. And without their accomplishments, I'm not able to spout off all those numbers and those great things that we were able to accomplish. So it's been a long story of how we got to this point, and we're hoping that somehow 15 is still just a launch off point for us. We want to reach some point where fans are coming to us 2, 3, 4 weeks early for tickets, because they know if they wait till the last minute,
it's going to be
it's going to be gone. And we have a motto that we had a previous member of our organization tell us: the motto, never apologize for a sellout.
No.
And I think it's when we've reached a point where we have to start telling people we're sorry, we've sold out. It speaks to,
that's why you want to get your season tickets.
It speaks to the support of our
Season
fan
tickets,
base.
people.
Yep. Big savings off of box office prices.
Yes.
Or what my sales cohorts would say.
Yes. So, so all of this great, wonderful game success, and you mentioned, well, it was a long road, but really it hasn't been.
No.
It hasn't been that long. So that's really incredible, But then I also want to talk a little bit about, it's not all about just being on the ice and playing hockey for you,
Absolutely.
your team, the staff and the team. So let's talk a little bit about what your community efforts are, and where do you, what is it that you wish people knew about the organization and the team in that regard?
Yeah, if goal number 1A is to bring a Calder Cup back to Springfield, goal number 1B is something that Nate always talks about, and I echo it everywhere we go as well, is we want to be pillars in our community. And by that we mean we want to be fully engaged and invigorating the community around us. And there's a lot of ways that we can accomplish that. And we have some great work being done by Nate and our our human resources manager, Jessica Hansen, they've put together, with the support of Paul and the ownership group, the T-Birds Foundation. So we're able to generate funds as a 501(c)(3) to be able to kind of take in donations that we receive from things like jersey auctions that we do in-game, to ways that we support the community around town. And then we can have funds come in and we can send those out to different areas of our community, whether it's school systems, whether we can donate some hockey sticks and supplies to maybe phys ed programs that don't necessarily have the resources to be able to have hockey as a unit in their gym classes. Whether it's giving back school supplies, books. We were involved very closely with the Springfield City Library. One of our players was deeply engaged in literacy and reading programs, and we visited 6 or 7 libraries over the course of a year.
Nice.
Our mascot Boomer is going to all sorts of different appearances around town, nonprofits, hospitals, military functions, even things as simple as kids' birthday parties and corporate events and things that we want to lend our support, because we understand that without the support of our community at large, we're not able to do what we do on a day in and day out basis on game nights in our building. So it's paramount to us to be involved and entrenched in our community in those capacities. I think over the last season, combined between player and mascot appearances, we did north of 250 appearances by players or mascots around the area.
Sweet.
And it's a number that Nate challenges me and challenges our staff to get that number higher and higher each year, to the point that just about every young person has a chance to be influenced in a good way by us and what we're doing. Absolutely.
Nice.
And that is really our number one priority in the off-season months, is to find these outdoor events. As things start getting nicer outside, where can we be putting ourselves out there? Can we be putting ourselves in festivals and parades and fairs all around the surrounding area to A, show our support for our neighbors around us, and B, maybe go into places where hockey is not as much of a forethought for them, and show them what we're all about, that we're more than just the 60 minutes of gameplay on the ice 36 times a season, and hopefully plus 10, 15 more in the postseason. There's so many different things that we really want to be involved in, and we are so head in the clouds in our approach that we have to sometimes stop ourselves and say, we got to make sure that if we're dedicating our time to these things, we got to do them right. But our goal is each year we add a couple more things. We add a couple more traditions, a few more staple events year in and year out. And hopefully we would have done some good for those around us who do so much good all the time.
Right. So is there a particular initiative that you're working on now that you want to highlight, or something that's coming up that you want to bring attention to?
There's so many over the course of the regular season. I think a couple of things that we really are most proud of are our work, in particular with the cancer fighting and military organizations throughout the course of the season. So every year, the Pink in the Rink game each March, which really was, in our first season, that was really our first night that really kind of put us on the map in the area. And the folks with the Rays of Hope at Bay State Health, Kathy Tobin and her crew, do such a great job with that organization. And we really wanted to get in on the ground floor with them, because breast cancer awareness and Pink in the Rink is really an AHL staple in various markets. And there's so many people who work on a national level with Susan G. Komen or other breast cancer organizations. But what makes the Rays of Hope so special in this area is that so many of those funds, and I believe all of those funds, stay local in Western Massachusetts for cancer fighting, for support for those who are survivors and those undergoing treatment, what we can do for their families. And the Rays of Hope has thankfully graced us with the ability to kind of have us be their year kickoff event, because so many teams do the Pink in the Rink in October, which most sports leagues do something for, being Breast Cancer Awareness Month. But we know that in reality, it's a year-round effort for those fighting it. It doesn't just occur in October and then take the other 11 months off, unfortunately. So we've really utilized March as kind of we're hitting our stride in the second half of our season, and we know how much our fans like supporting local and supporting those who really are undergoing far bigger problems than we face day to day as a hockey organization. And so we've really struck a chord with so many in our community, making that kind of their kickoff staple fundraising event for the year, which kind of gets the ball rolling for them into the summer months and culminating with their great walk and run event each fall in downtown Springfield. So it's been a real match made in heaven for us. We've sold out every one of our 6 Pink in the Rink games. We paint the ice pink.
Nice.
Our jerseys are pink. Post-game jersey auctions go to the Rays of Hope. We raised $30,000 this year for the Rays of Hope,
Nice.
Which coincided nicely with their 30th anniversary year. So it really...
You couldn't have planned that any better.
It was tremendous.
Talk about a marketing
That the
opportunity.
proceeds ended up just approaching 30,000, and we
Nice.
evened it up at the top to make it 30K
Nice.
from the T-Birds Foundation off to the Rays of Hope, and that was tremendous. In the last couple of years, pivoting over to the military side of things, we've started to make military appreciation nights and military jerseys kind of part of our year in and year out approach to
Nice.
saluting our military members each year. And we do those jerseys in the month of January as well. We pay homage to the veterans, of course, each Veterans Day in November. But in January, again, as we're hitting the second half, we again see it as another chance to say, hey, we need to be thanking our military members more than just during Veterans Day and more than during Memorial Day and those times of year. So we've got some just fantastic artists, both in-house and some folks we outsource some work with, who create these amazing jerseys. And our Thunderbirds name, the moniker, is partially an ode to the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds, who
Right.
a few years ago we were lucky enough to actually present jerseys to the Thunderbird pilots,
cool.
numbers 1 through 11 or 12, I believe, who make up their Thunderbirds team.
Cool.
The number 5 pilot, interestingly enough, has an upside-down 5 on his uniform because he is the stunt pilot. So he's the one doing all the twirls and is spending most of his time in the air upside down, which terrifies me to my very core to think about.
Yeah.
But we've actually, our number 5 player the last 2 years has been able to, with league approval, wear an upside-down 5 on his jersey.
Oh,
We
cool.
think it's the first time in the history of the league that we were able to do that. And just sort of another way to
Fun.
pay homage to them.
Yeah.
And again, same situation as Rays of Hope, the jersey auctions and portions of other proceeds throughout the night. We've been able to give back to a number of different military-themed charities in the area. I know I'm going to forget one, so I'm not going to name them all off.
No.
But we've been able to kind of share the wealth and
Nice.
be able to give back to those who really make the ultimate sacrifice. And as I said before, with those who are fighting breast cancer, they're fighting a battle that is way worse than our worst day in our line of work. And we're very cognizant of the fact of what our military members do to allow us to be able to do what we do day in and day out,
Right.
both in our community and nationwide.
Right. Awesome. So we talked a little bit about, seasons past, seasons present, community efforts, past and present. What's your sense and what's your thoughts for the future going forward?
Ooh,
What
I gotta try
what you got lined up?
I got to try to put my Nate Costa hat on here
Yeah,
for this
yeah.
one. And
Go, Nate.
we're always trying to, I don't want to say push the envelope, because that makes it sound like you're doing something tacky or doing something that is near crossing the line. So that's not really the expression I'm going for. But we're looking for more ways that we can continue to engage with new fans and maybe new fan groups that aren't necessarily immersed in hockey. So we've been able to do so many celebrity appearances at games. So I mentioned the David Ortiz thing, which obviously still appeals to a sports audience, but we've had, over the years, we had Christopher McDonald, who played Shooter McGavin in Happy Gilmore. We had him last year. We've had stars from The Office, Leslie David Baker, who played Stanley Hudson. We had, this season, we had Jim O'Hare, who played Jerry Gergich on Parks and Recreation. We've had pro wrestlers. We've had NFL players. We've had a number of different celebrity guests. When Bryn Cartelli won The Voice, we had her sing the national anthem at a game since she's an East Longmeadow native. There's so many different areas to explore from a promotional standpoint that I know that we, in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure are going to be putting ourselves in the conference room and throwing all kinds of ideas on the wall and on the table. And we inevitably come up with a couple that kind of just have not really been tried before. I think it's kind of our staple to try to come up with new things. And every year we ask ourselves, man, how are we going to do better than what we just did?
Right.
How can we top ourselves? After David Ortiz, it was like, how are we going to top David Ortiz? Then All-Star happened, and we're like, how are we going to top All-Star? How are we going to possibly do more than that?
But if you can't conceive it you can't conceive it up here, then it's not going to happen in the real world.
Yeah.
So at least you're giving it that space.
Yeah, and
right?
I think that's what helps us, having so many different people of such varying backgrounds in our office. So we have folks in the office who aren't as big of hockey people as me. I'm someone who can kind of approach them with, here's some hockey related things that might be cool. But someone else might be more in touch with pop culture and say, hey, this is the 30th anniversary of this. Maybe this is a cool avenue to explore.
And being innovative is hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's easy to do the same old. And sometimes it appeals to us because it keeps us in our comfort zone, A. It's not a lot of extra work, B. But to be innovative is a lot of extra work. So,
People always say I'm in a creative field, but the joke I make with my fellow creative department heads in the office all the time is I'm good for about 1 or 2 great ideas a month. You guys have more in 1 hour than I have in a month. So that speaks to how tough it can be to kind of put the creative hat on. And it's so hard to think of things that haven't been thought of already. And
no.
One thing that we kind of also do around the American Hockey League is Nate's background in the AHL kind of was working for the league office for close to a decade. His main role was going around to different markets and observing best practices, from ticket sales to ticket promotions to marketing strategies. And we've kind of, he would say, borrowed some of those.
Well, you're not recreating the wheel.
Correct.
Right?
And
I think that's it's smart and it's wise, because now you have more brain space and bandwidth to be innovative in the areas that are most important, rather than recreating the basic wheels that just don't need to be recreated.
Yeah, and to us, the greatest form of flattery we can achieve as a team is when we look around the league and see other franchises modeling something they do after something that we did. And that's kind of the validation for us that, for all the days that we sometimes go back and forth with each other and we harp on small details here and there, when we look back and see other teams are mimicking us and sometimes maybe not quite as good as what we do, I think that kind of allows us to sit back and feel vindicated that we're doing something right. And that's not to say that we're going to assume that magically everything we do is going to turn to gold, because the second we do that is the second that we're going to have to kind of pick ourselves back up to this bar that we've set for ourselves.
Right. So we need to wrap this up, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to share with the audience anything that you felt like we didn't cover.
Ooh.
Is there an initiative? Is there a I don't know, event? Is there a something? Yeah,
all I can say to the listeners out there and the viewers, I think I've been told I have a tendency to ramble a little bit, and I think you kind of got the full-scale story of what we're all about as an organization. Cool. I just encourage everybody to, especially those in our community who are community leaders and people who have great causes and great things. If you're maybe just starting out as a nonprofit and you're looking to have folks who want to get involved, I encourage anyone out there who is a huge community leader and someone who's looking to do better in the world around them to kind of approach us, because we're always looking for, and myself in the off season especially, we're always looking for more locally based initiatives to be involved with.
Great.
And I think there's so many great things that we immerse ourselves in year and year out, but I know for a fact there's so much more untapped great things going on in our community that we want to be a part of. And we collectively as our heads, we try to find everything we can. We try to blanket the area, but we know there's things that are slipping under the cracks.
Sure.
And we want to be able to kind of highlight what these great folks in the area are doing. We recognize someone each game night, each season as a game changer.
Nice.
Someone who kind of is taking their passion for the world around them and doing something that's great for the business community, great for the children, great for the school systems, great for the medical field, you name it. There's so many different areas that we can touch upon. And I think that's something that I really want to make sure it's known in this area. And then for folks who kind of are still trying to figure out, I don't know, is going to a Thunderbirds game, is that really going to be the right kind of entertainment piece for us? I would tell anybody there's probably, of the 6,800 fans we have out on a given game night, I'm not sure 4,000 or 4,500 of them would necessarily remember the final score or who a player on our team was.
It's the experience.
If the experience was something where from the moment they walked in our door to the moment they walked out was something that they can take and say, hey, that was a great memory for my family. That was a great memory for my child. That was a great memory for us to experience as a community. That means every bit as much to us as if they enjoyed the game on the ice itself. We hope they enjoyed the game and become new hockey fans as a result of it, but we know we're there for a greater purpose than just for the sporting element of it itself.
Nice. So where can folks find you if they want to say, hey, here we are, or just to buy tickets or whatever?
Absolutely. SpringfieldThunderbirds.com. Season tickets, absolutely. We've got a great crew of sales members who really take the time to not just be a salesperson to you. You become really ingrained with them, and it becomes a real acquaintance and a friendship for so many of our season ticket members who are on a first name basis. When they see our ticket sales members in the community, it's sharing a handshake or a hug, and there's a great camaraderie with our office and with our fan base. It's really a great chance to get yourself involved in that capacity. We're on social media, all the platforms at Thunderbirds AHL, on Twitter, on Facebook. We're starting to delve a little more into TikTok, but I'm way too old to try to even make sense of that.
Right.
We've got a much younger social media coordinator, and she is much more in tune with that than I am. So I will give all the nods to her on that front. Instagram as well, same kind of situation. We're trying to cultivate some great content for younger viewers, particularly those in the preteen to high school sector as well, because we hope that there's a time 10, 15 years from now when they're starting to have their families, hopefully still in this region, that they can kind of remember what they saw as kids themselves. And hopefully it's inspiring the next generation to become part of what we do. Sure. And again, as I mentioned, anyone who has great community ideas and wants and would love to have T-Birds involvement in some capacity, we do everything in our power to try to become involved in that way, shape, or form. It's so easy for us to get involved, and really as long as someone matches our vision of wanting to better our community, it's something that we would always love to be part of.
Sweet. Excellent. Well, Ryan, this has been a great morning. Thank you for taking time to share about your journey and who you are and how you fit into the Thunderbirds family, and also the excitement around the Thunderbirds. So we appreciate your time.
Absolutely, Mo.
Yeah, great. And so with that, we're wrapping it up. I want to thank E-Media once again for allowing us to be here, allowing us to do that, and helping Ryan and I to look and sound great. And if you want more information about E-Media, you can find them at easthamptonmedia.org. If you want more information about the Easthampton Chamber, it's easthamptonchamber.org. And I want you to please hit that like button, smash the subscribe button, and share and let everybody know that we're here. And that would be really terrific. So thanks a bunch. Peace out, everyone.